Hi, Alan. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Dean. It's a pleasure being on your show. Thank you.
I want to point out to our listeners that you're making a very big sacrifice to be with us at this hour. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You just told me where you are. So
Yes.
I'm sure a number of our listeners that are not insomniacs will appreciate that specifically.
Well, there may be some other people up the same time as me, but that's how it is.
I understand. I understand. I'd like to jump right into some general but significant questions for you. You've been what I would describe as a consciousness researcher for a number of years. And that in that consciousness research, of course, that is inclusive of who you are and what you are. In your research, have you come to a definition of consciousness?
Uh, yes, I have. The consciousness is the sound or the vibration of the energy of the universe. It permeates the entire universe and then it permeates us. It's something you can't touch or feel. You can only experience consciousness, and that consciousness exists at all times. So we are actually moving within consciousness and our consciousness ourselves, but we don't know that until we become aware of it. This is basically what I've found over all the years. That's the conclusion.
David Chalmers, actually an Australian origin philosopher, wrote in the early 90s or proposed the hard question of consciousness. Are you familiar with his work at all?
I've heard of his name and I haven't read any of his work.
Okay. The sum and summary have greatly reduced. He's much more elaborate in his inquiry, but his quandary from a philosophical standpoint is the easy question of consciousness is very simple. It essentially is the acknowledgement of motion within perceived physicality. The hard question is the question of feeling, and he poses the question that he and his brother observed the same um, sunset, and one feels one way about it, and the other one feels differently about that. And to me, that was an interesting philosophical question, but philosophy has a habit of excluding um, most of the um, conceptual information necessary to understand consciousness, and so they stumble perpetually over what consciousness is. And in my research, which is obviously independent of your search, my definition for consciousness is very simply our creatorness intoxicated with free will, with the understanding that free will is not our choice to turn right or to turn left. That's the product of free will. Free will is actually our perception of separation. And that perception of separation is what allows consciousness to, or our creation, and consequently consciousness, which is creation, to exist. Do you have any thoughts on that greatly summarized conclusion?
Yes, it can be interpreted many ways, as you just mentioned with David Chalmers. But with the sunset, it's to me that's not really a consciousness that is observing it. It's a human being observing it. So therefore, it's something physical, and that's really in your vision of how you perceive things. That's not really consciousness to me. Consciousness is the existence of the divine energy of the entire universe. Now, that divine energy can be called God or Jesus or Buddha or Allah or any name, divine energy, Shiva, Krishna. These names have gone back through thousands of years, where the ancient Sufis and yogis and teachers have tried to find a name for this higher energy. And this higher energy just exists, which is us in a human form. We've come in a human form from the divine energy, the consciousness, into a human being to enjoy a human experience. If we were not a human, and when we die, we'll go back to being part of the universe, but we're never separate from it. We're always joined with it. For those listeners that have a Christian background, in the Bible, Jesus said, "My Father and I are one," meaning his higher consciousness and the conscious mind are one. They're never separate. Just one is a higher level of being non-physical, but it is not separate from us. We wouldn't exist without that consciousness being with us all the time. It is always listening to us and ready to help us. So all we have to do is speak with emotion to the consciousness, and it will respond back to you with emotions and feelings. And this is what we feel in our heart when we have a feeling of something, or love. These emotions build up from the feeling of being connected to the consciousness. I believe that the frequencies through the universe and the vibrations are all that makes up what we call matter, the illusion of something that we can see. We think that we are seeing things, but we're not really. It's just all an illusion. When we break them all down, all we have is frequency and vibration. So that's where we came from, and that's where we return. But during our journey on this earth as a human being, to become aware of this is the greatness of it all. To actually know that where you are and who you are and where you're going to is a wonderful feeling when you become aware of who you really are.
Do you perceive consciousness to be a concept?
No, definitely not. It's not a concept. It is there. It is the love we feel for emotion. Twins feel it when they're connected from that feeling, and maybe separate right across the universe. This is like the duality of what would you call particles, quantum physics, where they separate a photon by thousands of light years, but when they affect one half, the other half is affected at the same time, regardless of the distance. So when Einstein said nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, well, when they affect the photon and the other one is affected at the same time, the other half, then it's instantaneous. There is no separation, because there was never anything separate to start with. It's like a magnet. You cut it in half, you still have north and south. Until you get to a grain of sand, you still have a north and a south. You just can't separate it. So consciousness, to me, it just exists, and we become aware of it. It's the divine energy. And I like to think of it as just the existence of the universe, and it forms itself into matter and experiences itself in a human being. We could say
Okay.
that
Do
thought
you
comes from that.
is your is do you perceive the motion, the vibration to be um, separate from consciousness? Does consciousness exist without vibration, or is it inherently the same?
It's basically the same, because when we look inside the particles, break them down into atoms, and inside the atoms we have protons, neutrons, and electrons. Well, inside the electrons we have quarks, ups and downs, and muons and charms. There's 12 of them, and inside the quarks there is nothing but strings of energy, just vibrating energy of negative and positive. The entire universe is just permeating with this energy, and when it forms together, it creates the particles into atoms, which then form into matter that we see. So what we see is really an illusion, the illusion of us and trees, plants, rocks, planets, is just an illusion, because inside that there's just vibrating energy. That energy permeates the entire universe, which goes on forever. The consciousness is also the same. It's just another word for being the divine energy that is there, that forms itself into matter. It's probably a hard thing to describe. I feel it and I see it, and I have existence through miracles that happen when I connect to it. And many people do. They do this all the time through their daily life. They feel like small miracles happen, or we would call coincidences, but they're really connection to that higher consciousness.
So the strings of consciousness, do they have physicality in your perspective?
No, no, they're not. They're non-physical energy. There is nothing physical about them. That's the illusion that we are made up of all this. But what we're seeing is just an illusion of all these strings of energy forming a matter. The
Okay, so
matter is like, it's like a
what
thought energy.
okay, then the string nature of these, if they're not physical, what do you perceive them to be?
Um, Consciousness, God energy, thought energy. When we create a thought and plant it as a seed in the mind, it forms, it sends a signal to our muscles through the synapses and changes the way we want to do things. So that thought is a signal that actually operates the muscles in our body. But the thought doesn't stop there. It permeates outside of our body into the field. And the field is everything around us, and the field shapes the particle. So our thoughts are shaping everything, and our thoughts are connected to the higher consciousness. It is waiting for us to tap into it and ask for whatever we want. And what we're asking is negative and positive. We get what we want. And even if we don't want, it's created by our thoughts. And that's a very hard thing to go and describe what thought is, what consciousness is. It's like, well, describing what God is, it just exists. It's there. There isn't anything, any structure to it. You can't shape it. It's just awareness when you realize what it is.
Okay,
I
so
can, yeah.
what is awareness?
Awareness is the state of understanding that you are the higher consciousness. You are the divine energy. You can't be consciousness becoming aware. You are aware. You are consciousness, but you're not awareness. The awareness is the understanding that you are the consciousness of divine reality. Within nothing, there is everything, and that everything is where consciousness exists. And until we realize or become aware that that awareness is the awakening, and most of the time we're not awake, we're asleep to the five senses of being what we see as being physical and real. It is not real. It is just an illusion that we're living in this world. But we're here to enjoy this world.
Isn't that the product of awareness, though? What you're describing?
Yes, so we become aware of what we're seeing and what we're doing. So our conscious mind has desires and wants things as a human being does, which generally comes from our five senses, which we're blessed with. If we didn't have five senses, we wouldn't experience being a human being. So once we experience those five senses and know that we are a physical being, then we connect that to the higher consciousness, which is the divine energy that is never away from us. It's always there. It's non-physical, but connected with us. As where Jesus said, "My Father and I are one," meaning no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son. So the higher consciousness is the Father, and the Son is the physical being. says no one can ever know you better than your higher consciousness, and vice versa. So this is the divine connection of energy that is there with us. We don't realize that as physical beings, but becoming aware of it helps us understand it. And through that, we can live a very happy life by understanding that we can really have whatever we want. We just have to connect with this and ask the questions.
Okay, so
Oh,
in your perception, do we create thoughts?
yes, we do create thoughts because we have that choice of what we want to do and what we want to experience as our five senses through our desires. So our thoughts are chasing things to satisfy these desires, which is a human enjoyment. We can never satisfy them. We experience them at the time we're having them, like hearing or taste or feeling something. But as soon as that's gone, it can never be satisfied. It wants more. So the thoughts are we want more of those desires. If you didn't have the desires, we probably wouldn't have any thoughts. We'd just be existence. So if you're in a non-physical state before you come into a human being, and then we look at the physical being seeing a rainbow, the non-physical, the consciousness cannot experience the rainbow because the rainbow is the consciousness. And likewise, if you want to taste sugar, only a physical human being can taste the sugar because the higher consciousness is the sugar. It can't experience itself. So it forms into a human being to experience itself through a human being. It's like the highest level of an animal that the higher consciousness can enjoy the feeling of being what it is. Does that make any sense, Dean?
It does, yes. I would disagree with a lot of that, but that's not important at this point. I'm wanting to get your thoughts. And so, thoughts are processed by a mind. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, what is a mind?
The mind, I don't know, it must be part of the brain, where the conscious part of the brain wants to experience what a human being can experience, five senses, desires to satisfy these things. So the mind often wants to chase these things. Without that, we don't have a mind. When we die,
Okay,
we don't
because
have a mind.
so the mind is a function of the brain in your perspective.
Yes, yes, it is a function of the brain. It holds memory, it experiences things, it sees things, it has the desire to chase things, which is generally to satisfy the experiences. This is just part of what the mind wants to do. The higher consciousness is the non-physical part of that, which is connected all the time.
Okay, when you reference higher consciousness, and I'm going to make a leap here. I assume that you perceive higher consciousness as being a higher vibration, since all consciousness is, in your explanation, vibrational. Is that correct?
Yes, I would think that it is a vibrational frequency that is there. That is
Well,
the
now
high consciousness.
frequency is a time measurement. And that is something that we in this range of consciousness that we share use in order to establish a measurement of vibration. But outside of this range of consciousness, it is my understanding that we are not um, constrained by the concept of time. And so, referencing vibration outside of the limitations of our range of consciousness uh, takes frequency out of the equation, because time is simultaneity. The concept of a mind, does higher vibrational consciousness have a mind if they are not, are they physical, or are they not physical? If they are not physical, do they have a mind?
Well, the vibrating strings of energy that they absorb with the electron microscope, is just it's not matter. It's just energy vibration. So it's not really measured by time. That frequency of strings that just permeates the universe. It's just existence that is there. But when it's formed the negative and positive attracted to each other, then that forms the quarks, which eventually forms matter. It builds it on itself. It attracts to itself. But when it's in the smallest denomination, it is just vibrating energy. It just, where there's nothing in the universe, there is this strings of energy waiting to form together.
So what distinguishes uh, the levels of consciousness, higher consciousness versus lower consciousness, etc.?
Well, lower conscious. Well, I don't think there's a lower consciousness. There's only consciousness. I term it higher consciousness because it's above our conscious mind. But the conscious mind is not consciousness. The conscious mind is the thinking part of a human being. The consciousness is the it's a non-tangible part that exists with us. It's not separate. We would call it God, if we want to, or different divine energy through the universe. It is there all the time. You can't measure it. It's just there. So we experience that through being a human being.
But you don't conceive of that as being hierarchical.
So say that again, that last bit.
You don't perceive that as being hierarchical. The ranges of consciousness or the variety in vibrations of consciousness.
As a level of different levels rising up from the conscious mind, I think the conscious mind is really where it stops in the physical body. These The consciousness is non-physical. It can't be touched, but it is felt and experienced because we are living in that consciousness. It's just everywhere. There's no place where it doesn't exist. So we are just part of it in a physical being, enjoying this as a conscious being.
Okay, but you don't perceive that as being hierarchical,
No, I think,
ranging.
no, I don't think it's ranging. I perceive it as being a physical being can't go any further. But when we connect to the consciousness, then we are tapping into the creation of what we want to have or do. But I
Okay,
don't
but
think
you
there's any.
you've referenced several times higher consciousness, and I'm trying to understand what distinguishes us from higher consciousness.
I think it's more of a terminology that I'd use as being, like people would say, as a super consciousness. Well, that's the same as a higher consciousness. There is only the consciousness, which is, in my mind, the higher level. The conscious mind is the physical level. So we could just stop at the higher, not say the higher at all, and just call it consciousness. But that is not the conscious mind. The conscious mind is only a part that the physical body experiences that we want to consciously aware, but the consciousness is always there that we can't measure. But we're not disconnected. We're just part of it. It's not like a separate thing. It's what we are made of, and we are not really knowing that until we become aware of it. It's like you could say it's God, just in we are in the physical form, but whether you can't measure what God is because God is everywhere. Divine energy in the universe is everywhere. So divinity is everywhere. There is only just divinity, and we've come into the human form to experience what we do experience.
What is your understanding of the nature of our experience when we lose, when before or after we are not in physical form as a human?
We go back to, well, we are the consciousness inside us, within us all the time. And when the physical body dies, the conscious mind dies. But the consciousness that was everywhere, we're still part of it. We just cannot be disconnected from it. because we're
Do
made
we
up of
still
that.
perceive ourselves as autonomous beings?
No, because we're not separate. We're not, as consciousness, we're not separate beings. We're all just one. We're connected to everything. So it's only the conscious mind that actually thinks we're separate. So that's the only
Okay, so
separation is from.
some people that have experienced NDEs, for example, and this is well documented, they one of the things that they marvel at is they still have a perception of self. They still feel that they are themselves. Uh, do is your perception that transforms, that we no longer have a perception of self when we're not incarnate in a body?
I've seen many videos on NDEs with people's experiences, and they've been documented, but no one can actually measure what they see. It is only within that person's mind that can see these things, and every person has a slightly different version of this. All I can say
Is the mind still within the brain at that point?
all I can say is that I've had a outer body experience where I did through meditation, and I used to do this for years and years at a certain time of the morning where it was quiet, like 4 o'clock in the morning. I would get up just to meditate, and most of the time I just sit there listening to the quietness and the stillness and any voice that may come to my mind, whether it be mine or divine energy, I don't know, but I drifted out of my body. And how I know that is that I was looking back at my body sitting there at the foot of the bed on the floor. And at that stage, I was the curtain, I was the wall, the ceiling, I was the glass, I was everything. So the feeling I had was that I was everything at once, but I didn't feel anything being solid. I was just everything looking at my body. And I wasn't separate, but I could see my body there as a physical energy. And before I knew it, I went back into my body. And then I was looked up at the ceiling where I thought I was looking back at my body and there was nothing there. But I knew that I drifted out of my body to become aware that I am more than just a conscious body. So I don't know if this is a similar thing to NDE, but that told me that I know that I'm more than just a physical body. I am this consciousness that is there all the time.
That's a little. I've done the same thing to observe the life force energy that we all have, and my observation of the life force energy, not just of me but of everyone, is a really beautiful royal blue. It is that it's surrounds our body. I've also had the experience of progressing along the transitional path that we take when we die. I haven't done the birth thing, but I was guided to go a certain distance and warned, don't go don't go past here. You don't want to go past this point. And but I had that experience up to that point in returning, and there is that feeling, and this was not due to a trauma. This was a meditative, an intentional meditative effort on my part. And I still very much had that perception of beingness, of self, that I think if that were a product, as we perceive a mind to be the product of a brain, that would dissipate upon the unattachment to the body, would it not?
It's debatable, and everyone may have a different opinion of this, but I had an experience where I had a allergic reaction to something I had eaten, and I collapsed and blacked out. And then I heard my wife calling me, but she sounded a long way away. She was right next to me, trying to bring me back, but she sounded like she was maybe 30, 40 meters away down a long tunnel. And I was in this tunnel heading towards light. And I could just see the light where I was going to become one with the light.
Hmm.
And then I slowly got pulled back to where her voice was and realized I was in a room where she was, and collapsed and then become my conscious mind again. So that light was nothing solid, but I thought that I was going to become part of that light.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to me, that was another sort of experience of drifting away from the conscious body into the subconscious or higher conscious, or the consciousness that is something else there. And
Hmm.
all I saw was just light.
Okay. When you speak of the quantum, quantum, I think, is a greatly overused phrase to make the advertising people happy in these days and times.
Yes.
Excuse me. What is your interpretation of something that is quantum?
Um, Subatomic, uh, minute. Quantum to me is like nano, the smallest you could possibly, I don't know, measure, I suppose. I haven't really delved into what actually is quantum, other than that what physicists use as the quantum entanglement. I've accepted that they use the term quantum for something that is perhaps extremely small or something we can't measure. I always remember the movie in 1988 was called Down the Rabbit Hole, where the physicists were trying to explain the quantum physics, and at the same time, the spiritualists were trying to explain what God is and spirituality. They were both virtually following the same path, but never crossing over or agreeing with each other. That movie was a huge worldwide movie hit.
I
Um,
remember seeing it. Yeah, it's been a
mm,
while, but yeah.
it sort of opens your mind, and that was my first experience into the quantum world of what they talk about, and I just have really used the word quantum loosely as the physicists have described it. But to me, I've never really wanted to know a lot more about quantum, other than wanting to learn about the consciousness of where we come from and what we are and who we are, and that we are the controllers of everything that happens to us.
Okay.
That was more of an important thing for me to discover.
What distinguishes the uniqueness of one person from another person in your perception?
The uniqueness is the physical body that we see, and but the things we've learned over our lifetime through experiences and education. So that shapes the person who we are from what we're learning. Before we come into the human being, we're all the same, but each person has a different journey. And those journeys are it's like someone else on the same path traveling in a human being, like hopping into a car, and the other person's also in their car on a similar journey. And you stop and get out and talk to each other about all your experiences of where you've been and what you've done. It's like an exciting journey, but we're just non-physical um, energy enjoying this journey. So that creates a different person having their journey too. So it's a wonderful thing when you're talking to other people of their journey. So if they experience great things and enjoyment, that's wonderful. But if they don't experience it, maybe they on a different journey, and it's the only thing that's making unhappy for them is the attachment to physical things and desires in this life. Non-attachment just creates happiness, and that's that's what the main thing that I found is the non-attachment.
Okay, which is very traditional spiritual um,
Yes,
teaching.
yes, yes. I suppose it is. I've had many experiences where these things have come into my life to tell me this is the truth, and then they vanish again. So, through people that maybe appear out of nowhere, and messages that come to me, and things materialize out of nothing, and I know they're messages to show me that the divine energy is always there. You just need to be aware of it. One experience I had was I had an art shop many years ago, and where I used to frame some pictures in it. and my wife was in an art gallery in a separate location. And one day a gentleman came into my shop and asked me to frame some pictures for him. And they were just little 6x4 photographs. Maybe he had about 60. There was a massive stack of them. And he said, "Can you frame half a dozen?" And I looked at them, and they just looked that interesting to me. They just looked family holidays, people in every shot, and the scenes weren't very photographic as a nice picture, but I thought they're his. So I said, "Which ones do you want?" And he said, "It doesn't matter. You pick 6 of them." I said, "Well, I can't pick your photos because you might have certain people and you want to see." And he said, "Well, it doesn't really matter." He said, just choose 6." And I said, "Well, okay, what sort of molding framing would you like to put around them?" "Oh, it doesn't matter." He goes, "You choose that too." I said, "Well, that depends on what's in your house. Do you have wood on the walls, or do you have wooden furniture, or want some gold in it, or silver?" He says, "No, I'll leave that up to you." I said, "No, well, I can't really do that." I said, "Because it's your preference." "No, honestly," he said, I don't mind. Just pick 6 and frame them up." And I said, "Would you like some mat card put around them?" "Oh, I'll leave that to you," he goes. And I'm starting to think maybe this guy's a bit loopy. So I said, "When do you want them?" "I'll call back in 2 weeks." So I said, "Well, okay, I'm thinking maybe I'm dealing with someone that's a bit of a Fruit Loop here." So I took the photographs, the whole stack of them, and I said, "Okay, I'll see what I can do just to move him on." So I grabbed the photographs and I walked towards the rear part of my shop where my workshop was, which was just through a little doorway. And I put the photographs on my desk and I walked to where my workshop bench was, where I'd be framing other people's pictures. And I hear the carpet scuffed up behind me, and the gentleman was walking in behind me into my workshop. I thought, this is a bit cheeky. And I had a glass of water sitting on a filing cabinet to remind me to drink water throughout the day. And he stops at the filing cabinet, and I look back at him thinking, "Why are you inside the workshop?" And he picks up my glass of water. And I thought, "Don't you drink my water." And he holds it in the air and says, "You see, Alan, if I look in this water, I can't see the bottom. But if I put the glass down and it becomes still, everything becomes clear and I can see the bottom." And he said, "What I would like to know, Alan, is what can you see when you still your glass of water?" And then he smiled and walked out of the shop. And I thought, that was very profound, quite fascinating. Why did he tell me that? I thought about it for probably up to 30 seconds or a minute. And I thought, where did he go? So I walked out of the shop door and looked up and down the street, and he wasn't anywhere. So I thought, oh, well, he's probably hopped in a car quickly, or someone's picked him up. Or anyway, I went back to work, kept thinking about that for months, and he never come back. Never ever. And the photograph stayed there. So I took that as a divine message come in a human form to tell me to still my mind. And in the stillness of my mind, everything becomes revealed. So that's what I've been doing all these years, stilling my mind. And then I do hear the thoughts and the messages from the divine energy. So that's just one of the experiences that happened in my life.
Did he have a surfing shirt on with
No, no, nothing, nothing, that was sort of stood out. It's just nothing.
Okay.
But I knew eventually it was a divine energy that is in everyone, and it had come to me for a message that I needed to hear.
Yes. Okay. So, after, in your perception, after we leave this incarnation and we reintegrate into the whole of the universe, whole of creation, what is preserved after a lifetime?
What is observed
Preserved. What
or
is preserved?
preserved? Nothing. In a lifetime of being a human being, nothing. It's just we're dead, we die, so we decay. The physical being is decayed.
Right,
The
but
conscious, the
does
consciousness hasn't
consciousness
decayed.
continue?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
it
and we
hasn't decayed.
reintegrate with the universal consciousness.
Correct. We go
Is
back.
anything preserved? Is anything preserved after a lifetime?
No, we came here to enjoy a human experience, and this is why we came here. But when we're one with the universe, we can't feel anything. We're just bliss. We're just pure energy in a non-physical form. We
So,
don't
what is
have
the
any shape.
purpose? What is the purpose of creation?
to enjoy a human experience, to experience
Why?
itself,
Why?
to experience itself, because the universe can't experience itself unless it becomes a human being. It has no feeling. Only a human being has feelings.
But
So
why?
this is why,
What purpose
well,
does that serve?
to to um, to feel itself, to experience itself. Why not? It's a great feeling to see a rainbow, or see a beautiful, or hear music, to see scenery, to eat food. These are great things that the divine energy can't feel or experience. So why not enjoy them? We come back, it's infinite. So we could be experiencing infinite lifetimes on other planets and other galaxies at the same time. We're just energy in non-physical form. So why not enjoy yourself as a physical being in another planet and then die and go back and go again? Because as a divine energy, you don't experience anything. You are everything. This is basically what I put it down to. And I think it's a great
What
thing.
is the most positive? I'm looking for a word to describe this. What feels best?
Being aware that you are consciousness. Enjoy the physical being while we're in this being, but the best part is being aware that you are divine energy. You know you're unlimited. You know you're not bound to this physical body. You're not bound to suffering in here. It is the choices we make that cause these things. So that is the greatest thing of all, to become aware that we are divine energy.
Okay, and that feels the best.
Well, as
What
feeling,
does
we
that? What
only,
does knowing having that awareness? What does that? How does that change us? How does that transform us? For someone
I don't
who
know about
is not aware, for someone that becomes aware, what is the transition? What is different?
the difference is that when we're conscious in the physical body, we are bound to happiness and suffering. When we're aware that we are just consciousness in a physical form, we're not bound to that suffering. We're just experiencing it. And it's our choice if we want to experience it or not experience it. We don't have to experience any suffering if we don't want to. Some people think they're born into it, but we shape it by how our thoughts are. And that's part of being consciousness, wanting to experience all the attributes of a human being. Becoming aware of it is the greatest thing of all, because then I realize there is nothing I can't do or know anymore. I don't want to be a doctor or a physicist or a mathematician. That's all just part of being a human being. But to become aware that I am the consciousness in a human form is a wonderful enjoyment. I had a lady ask me in a business I had many years ago. I had a furniture shop, and I was watching all the customers in the shop, and she was walking around just as one of the customers. It's an extremely large shop. There's like a journey going through the furniture store. And she spied me from the other end. She must have been maybe 90 meters away, a long way off. And she looked straight at me, and I thought, she has a question. So she walked through all the furniture, past other customers, and come straight up to me. And she says, "Can I ask you a question?" I says, "Yeah," thinking what sort of furniture she wanted. And she said, "What is one thing you can tell me?" "What do you mean, one thing?" "Well, what can you tell me?" "About what?" She said, "About anything." I said, "Any subject, anything you
Let me tell
like."
you about this glass of water.
No, well, I didn't, but yeah. And I thought, this is, my mind was just full of questions and thinking, well, this is a bizarre. What should I tell her? And I said, "What do you want me to say?" She said, "Well, anything. You just tell me one thing. What would it be if you could tell me?" "Well, I can tell you that God is in everything. God is love. We all experience that through God is in the walls, the chair, the furniture, the animals. God is just all one." And she just smiled and nodded. And she said, "May I ask you one more thing?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What is the greatest gift you've ever been given?" And I said, "Well, that one's fairly easy." I said, "It just comes in an instant. I've been given the gift of unconditional love." And she smiled and she said, "Thank you." And I said, "Is that it?" She says, "Yes." "Did you want anything about furniture?" "No." I said, "Well, why did you ask me those questions?" "Well, I saw you and I knew you had the answer." "Well, then, what are you, a student or studying philosophy?" "You could say that," she goes. And she walked out of my shop. And I was left thinking, what a profound thing just happened. Was she the spiritual energy of divine God in a human being, making me aware or bringing to my awareness that we are all non-physical and we are here to enjoy things? And the greatest gift is unconditional love. So that just stayed with me for years, but it was very real at the time. And these
So,
sort of things just happen over my life.
what is love?
Love is the experience of emotion, being connected to the divine energy. That's the only way we can connect, through the emotional feelings. It can't be physically measured. Love is the existence of, I suppose, well, existence is not the best word, but the awareness and knowing that we are the God within us that is everywhere. That love is wonderful, to know that you're loved by your consciousness. So yes, I would say that that is what we are, and what love is. Just can't be measured, but it is there. We know it's there.
Okay, so is love something that can be given or withheld?
It's love is something you experience. You
It
think you
is.
can give it, you think you can give it, but it is already there anyway. You just become aware of it, and you not make, but you help someone else become aware that you're giving them love when you do give them love, and they become aware that this feeling or the emotion is love, but it was already there anyway. What they've done is, what they have had is an experience of experiencing it through maybe your um, exusion of love from your own being to them through kindness, and they feel that, but it can't be measured.
Okay. Okay. Um, Alan, this has been great. Do you have any parting words of wisdom that you would like to share with our listening audience?
Um,
You've
I, I've
offered
re-
a lot. You've offered a lot. Is there a concluding exclamation point to all that you've offered?
I've been studying this for probably nearly 50 years, from being a child and not understanding things through my Christian upbringing, and even the priests and could not explain things that I thought were in the Old Testament were fascinating. But when I ventured more in my teenage years and adult years into Eastern philosophy, into Hinduism and Buddhism, and started studying ancient Egyptian um, things and lots of stuff like that, Hermeticism and the Vedas, the Upanishads, where Jesus had studied those too for his trips to India. I thought, this is all one energy, one truth that's been held from us. And I like that. So I've been questioning that and studying that. What is this reality? Can I actually be part of it? And I thought, I am part of it through the experiences and miracles that happened. So I had lots and lots of things happen to me over the years where I connected to the divine. I wasn't disconnected, but I was becoming aware that I was connected. And I thought, I would like to tell everybody this, and wrote it into this book. So I wrote my experiences that happened as miracles in the book. And in between those, I wrote chapters of how I believe it all works, that we are the creators of everything that we want to happen to us. So the book is called The Sacred Hum of I Am, because the I Am is the creating part of it. And the sacred hum is the vibration, which permeates everywhere. Even the ancient philosophers use the same words, the sacred hum being the I am, the creator. So that was also given to me when I connected to the divine and asked, what is the name of my book? And the answer came back, I am is the answer. And so I asked again, what shall I call my book? And the words came back in my mind, I am is the answer. And I thought, well, that has to be my book. So I hope people, if they read this book, will have a greater understanding of what I've been trying to study and learn, and hopefully it will help them on their journey too, because we're all on different journeys at different levels.
Terrific. Thank you, Alan. I'm going, if you're familiar with how this works, I'm going to stop our recording and we can chat for a few minutes after we get off the
Okay,
recording.
that'd be great.
Okay. All right.
Yes.